But for them to call for a ceasefire is Mr. Putin's message. Mr. Putin's message. Make no mistake, this is directly connected to what he would like to see.
You heard that right. According to Nancy Pelosi, if you're part of the majority of Americans and 68% of Democrats, by the way, who supports a ceasefire because, I don't know, maybe you're against mass murder and don't think that your tax dollars should be funding a genocide, well, congratulations. You are doing Vladimir Putin's bidding. She actually said that with a straight face on national television. Whew. And what's amazing is that as she goes on TV and gives her entire base the middle finger, I'm sure it's only a matter of time before she sends us even more text messages hounding us for money. See, because she doesn't want your input, but she will happily take your money. So please donate. It's just so ridiculous. But for the first time in a really long time, the Democratic Party is facing real resistance from their own base, and they are clearly not taking it well. And we've seen basically two ways that they've responded to this. The first is to just respond to your base protesting you by antagonizing them further. Let's see Exhibit A with John Fetterman. This is what he did when ceasefire protesters showed up to his home.
Fetterman, you can't hide! You're supporting genocide! Fetterman, you can't hide! You're supporting genocide!
This is the kind of representation that we have in America, folks. Rather than trying to have a conversation with people who are his constituents, he instead chooses to go on his roof and hold up the flag of a country doing a genocide to antagonize them. Great guy. But he's not alone, because back in October, Pelosi also saw protesters show up to her home for multiple days in a row, and her response was arguably more unhinged. And this brings us to Exhibit B, which is the second way that Democrats respond to ceasefire protesters. And that's to just deny that they even want a ceasefire.
Democrats want the ceasefire. The Democrats want the ceasefire. I have no connection with China.
Putin is allowing the murder of thousands of people.
She actually told them to go back to China. Nancy Pelosi, Democrat. Now, as Hunter Pauly pointed out on Twitter, Pelosi literally criticized Trump for his xenophobia when it came to COVID-19 and him calling it the China virus. And rightfully so, because she acknowledged that led to an increase in hate and bigotry against Asian Americans. But just a couple of years later, she's already telling Americans, mind you, to go back to China. It's just so insane. And listen, on a human level, I understand that they're irritated that people are protesting them at their homes. It might seem inappropriate to them, but it's not personal. It's politics. These are people in positions of power, and they are using their power to support a genocide. So as long as that continues, the protests will continue. And in my opinion, they don't deserve a single second of peace so long as they continue supporting this mass atrocity. But notice how she is choosing to just not believe that her base is even angry. Instead of trying to, engage with them and address their concerns, or maybe change policies even. She's just resorting to delusional Trumpian conspiracy theories. See, when Americans protest Republicans, then we're being paid by George Soros. But when Americans protest Democrats, then we're being paid by China or Russia. It must be so convenient to just blame Russia or China or George Soros instead of grappling with the actual concerns and anger of voters. But to be fair, she did entertain the idea for a second that maybe they're genuine. It's possible, right? But she then took the McCarthyism to the next level by calling for the FBI to investigate these ceasefire protesters. I'm not kidding about that. So here's her comments in full context.
One of the challenges that Democrats might have in organizing is some anger in some corners of the progressive movement over Joe Biden's support for Israel in its war against Hamas terrorists. How concerned are you, especially given the fact that we have seen protesters over and over and over at his events? How concerned are you that young people, Arab Americans, progressives, I'm not suggesting that they're going to go vote for Donald Trump, but how concerned are you that they might just stay home?
Well, let me just say this, because I've been the recipient of their, shall we say, exuberances in this regard as recently as in Seattle on Thursday, unfortunately, wanted to disrupt our very exciting Democratic meeting. They're in front of my house all the time. So I have a feeling for what feelings they have. But we have to think about what we're doing. And what we have to do is try to stop the suffering in Gaza. This is women and children, people who don't have a place to go. So let's address that. But for them to call for a ceasefire is Mr. Putin's message. Mr. Putin's message. Make no mistake, this is directly connected to what he would like to see. Same thing with Ukraine. It's about Putin's message. I think some of these protesters are spontaneous and organic and sincere. Some, I think, are connected to Russia. And I say that having looked at this for a long time now, as you know.
You think some of these protests are Russian plants?
I don't think they're plants. I think some financing should be investigated. And I want to ask the FBI to investigate that. But apart from that, let's just say it's all spontaneous and sincere. Let's say it's all spontaneous and sincere. Young people care about the right to choose. They care about LGBTQ issues. They care about preserving the planet. They care about gun violence prevention. That's what they tell us. They care about our democracy and the freedoms that are contained in some of what I said. So they're going to have to make a decision, staying home to enable or to agonize, organize, not agonize, but organize and get out there and get the job. I have every confidence that Joe Biden and Kamala Harris will be President and Vice President of the United States. I know we will carry the House. I'm confident that we can improve our numbers in the Senate, and we can do it because we're going to own the ground with our organizing. We're going to have a message of values for our country, and we're going to have the resources to get the job done.
It's so interesting how she can say that we should stop the suffering in Gaza, but then won't call for a ceasefire, which would stop the suffering in Gaza, and then also suggests that anybody supporting that position of stopping suffering in Gaza, which she purports to support, is just doing Putin's bidding. Like, the mental gymnastics here are so insane. You can almost see them in her head. Like, you could see the gears turning because she's trying to find a way to spin this, but she looks like shit, and I think that she knows she looks like shit. Now, I'm not sure if you noticed though, but she shifted the blame away from the Democratic Party and onto young people, because remember, the question was if Biden's actions would lead to them staying home. But she then says, well, young voters have to decide if they choose to enable Trump by not voting, as if voters would be the ones to blame in the event Trump won. I'm sorry, but it doesn't work that way, Nancy. Your job is to win elections by mobilizing your base. You have all the money, you have all the power, and voters in this instance are using their limited power to tell you what they want. If you are unable to mobilize your base because you are refusing to listen to them and you subsequently lose that election as a result, that failure is on you and you alone. You don't get to blame them for that. That's your fuck up. You own it. But what we're seeing here from Nancy Pelosi is cope. And she alluded to the protests happening nonstop, which is why I think she's coping so hard. And it just happened in Seattle, as she mentioned in that clip. And here's a clip of that protest.
Nancy Pelosi, you are complicit in the Israeli crime of genocide. I'm an Iraqi refugee, and I watch your government. You represent kill 1 million of my people. You killed 70,000 Afghans, and now over 30,000 Palestinians have died due to your complicity. We demand an end to the Zionist occupation of Palestine. We demand an end to the 17-year-long brutal siege of Gaza to be lifted. We demand an end. End the occupation now. 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 Free Palestine.
So this keeps happening, but rather than changing her position, she's choosing to just complain. But Nancy, you are a public servant. Emphasis on the servant. Your constituents elected you. They donated to you and canvassed for you. They are your boss. It's not the other way around, and they're telling you they are dissatisfied with what you are doing. But rather than course correct, she's essentially just telling them, to go fuck themselves. Now, political scientist Ian Bremmer offered a defense of Nancy Pelosi's conspiratorial comments on Twitter, writing, quote, Putin benefits from continued war in Gaza and expanded chaos in the Middle East. And I'm sure that they do. But understand what he's trying to do here. He's trying to make it seem as if she's not just conspiracy mongering like Trump by throwing out wild claims with no evidence. She's actually reasonable to suspect that Russia might be behind this given their meddling before. But the problem with this logic is that if Putin benefits from this chaos, why would Democrats like Nancy Pelosi enable him and do his bidding by not calling for an immediate end to this conflict? Maybe she's being paid by Putin after all. I mean, she does take hundreds of millions of dollars from large multinational corporations and foreign lobbyists. I mean, who's to say who's pulling her strings? See how two can play that game? If the chaos benefits Putin, then why would you support the chaos continuing? They don't think that far. It's just defend mommy because she's getting criticism for saying something very stupid, so we have to defend her. Defend her honor at all costs, even if it makes us look stupid as a political scientist, which is heartbreaking to me. Now, furthermore, as Peter Wade of Rolling Stone explains, quote, many other nations have called for a ceasefire, as have some appointees in the Biden administration. Maybe they're also paid Putin puppets. The International Court of Justice on Friday ordered Israel to take action to prevent acts of genocide. Last month, 153 countries in the United Nations General Assembly voted in favor of an immediate ceasefire between Israel and Hamas. The U.S. and Israel voted against the resolution, and 23 nations abstained. And I'm sure that all 153 of those countries are also under Putin's thumb. Every single one of them. You see, because it's so much easier to just blame Russia rather than take accountability for your own actions and the actions of your government. So why not just do that? I'm going to try that next time. Next time I mess up, I'm just going to blame Russia or blame David Dole or something. You know, that'd be the equivalent, right? It's so insufferable. These are the people who are running our country. It's sad. But here's the bottom line. The protests are not going to stop until our government stops supporting a genocide. And Nancy Pelosi should be ashamed of herself for spreading conspiracy theories about these protesters, but I mean, she has no shame. But it's exactly what we've come to expect from this corrupt, elitist, out-of-touch, delusional piece of shit.
Mom, I'm gay. Gays. Gays. Mom, I'm transgender.